What's going to happen tomorrow at this hearing?
We've got a hearing set for tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's titled a resentencing hearing. There'll be a lot of legal things that occur, but ultimately there's been an agreement reached where Mr. Tapp will be resentenced tomorrow.
And how did this agreement come about? What led you to this point?
You know, that's a long conversation. Let me just give you a few thoughts. A lot of people have said to me, specifically Carol has said, Danny, whether he did it or not, hasn't he served long enough? That's one thought. My investigator made some similar comments regarding the level of his involvement versus what his sentence ought to be. And so with that, I went and spoke with every investigator, every prosecutor that's handled this case, and I asked them that same question. If you could go back 20 years and consider what a settlement would have looked like back then, forgetting all of the noise and all of the vested interests and all the agendas, what would that have been? And without fail, every one of them put this case somewhere in the 12 to 25 year range. So I had that information. The defense, Mr. Tapp's attorneys approached me some time ago. They made me an offer last Saturday night based upon the things we've considered and considering those things that may have happened 20 years ago. I felt that it was a fair resolution of the case, and so we agreed to move forward with it.
And he will leave prison. He'll be out of prison. The murder conviction will still be on his record.
Yeah, the gist of the agreement is that he agrees to a murder conviction for him for the rest of his life. It's a first-degree murder case. He agrees that the weapons enhancement that he was convicted of would also stay. The state agreed to dismiss the rape charge. That would have been fairly typical in any other agreement on a case like this. And then we've agreed to a 20-year sentence plus some additional time, but a 20-year sentence based upon what we could show as his conduct for that crime. We got to remember, Mr. Tapp was always accused of and was found guilty of playing a small role in a much larger, very heinous offense. But his role was always just a very small portion of that. And so trying to balance that conduct against what the appropriate consequence is what's led us to this conclusion.
So some people will say, why not wipe his record clean? Completely get rid of the charge and he's a completely free man.
Sure. I understand that people come at this with a lot of different opinions, and I can appreciate all of those. We've certainly heard plenty. My review of the evidence, and we said years ago we would give this a fresh look, and we've done that. Our investigator, I think, gave as honest an opinion as he could. He puts Mr. Tapp at the crime scene with some minor level of involvement. It's fairly consistent with what the jury ultimately found. In my review of the evidence does not exonerate him. It never has. Anyone that suggests these new things that are coming up over the last couple of years, anyone that suggests those things exonerate him just simply are operating from a position of agenda that I don't have the luxury of doing. And so I've got to base it on an objective analysis of the facts and frankly do what I think is also fair for our community, fair for Mr. Tapp in some respects, and try to balance that conduct against what it deserves. And I think this satisfies that. It's important to note the defendant gives up this current and any future appeal rights. He's agreeing to this, and he came forward to me to offer this. I think that was appropriate. I think our community needs some closure. I think we need to heal from this, no matter what side of this equation you're on. And I think those things have some benefit as well.
So when Mr. Tapp walks out tomorrow, will he be on probation, parole, or is he done? There
were some conversations about that, and I think there's some merit in both sides of that conversation. It's my understanding Mr. Tapp wants to leave, and the reality is if he was on some supervision, he wouldn't be allowed to. And I don't know if that's healthy for him. I don't know if that's healthy for the rest of the community. And so that was a factor that kind of went into this. Another factor was with all the people that said he would have been out years ago had this case played out differently, that the fact that he served so much longer than he would have done also played a factor in whether there ought to be more supervision or more time held over his head. And that's why we ultimately decided not to go that route.
The DNA evidence, that was brought up at his original trial 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
This DNA evidence isn't anything new, anything that's changed, or has
Well,
it?
in theory, no. The entire first trial was about this. The entire defense was, and the parties agreed to this, there's DNA at the scene. It does not match Mr. Tapp. That was what the jury heard. They knew all of that. Now, there's some advances in DNA technology, and those will keep getting better, and we'll keep running down those leads. So there's some changes in terms of what DNA is available. But the concept that the DNA does not match Mr. Tapp was always the defense. The other defense was that his confession was false. The jury heard that. The defense put on that he had confessed falsely, and that was what they had argued, and ultimately the jury decided that was not true. And so, this idea that either one of these things are newer concepts is not accurate.
In making this agreement, has Mr. Tapp agreed to provide you with additional information that might help with the investigation?
That was part of the conversation regarding statements by him or things with regard to the investigation. In my opinion, regardless of what side of this you're on, anything Mr. Tapp says is suspect at best. Because what we all agree on is that he certainly has lied multiple times. So any statement from him is simply worthless from my perspective. There's been discussions over time regarding him naming other people. There's been potential agreements that may have occurred over time. But ultimately, when we get to this point, we're simply dealing with the amount of time he served for the conduct that he committed. And we thought that was fair, and any effort to have him cooperate any further has been unfruitful thus far.
There's a killer out there.
Yes.
Where does the case go now?
Well, I think from my perspective, myself as well as the police department can double our efforts. I have seen a great effort on the part of the police department to work down that portion of the case. That's aside from Mr. Tapp. We know there's others involved. No matter what side of this you're on, either the killer or the other killers, it just depends on your perspective. But we know there's others. And I've seen a good effort by the police department, and I think that will continue. On my watch, it certainly will.